The anime begins with 4 high school teenagers watching a match supporting the Japanese team who were competing in the semifinals. The match ended with the Japanese team as the winner. The 4 teenagers cheered with joy because of the victory that had just been achieved by the team they supported. To celebrate the victory, they go to a ramen shop in Shibuya. They spent time in the tavern until the sun came up. One of them, named Yatora, went to the bathroom to change into his school uniform. In front of the bathroom, he saw a poster about an exhibition of Picasso's paintings. He was silent for a moment and was busy thinking about how good Picasso's painting was. According to him, everyone can draw a Picasso-style painting. He had finished changing his uniform while his 3 friends were still relaxing while enjoying their cigarettes. Yatora reminded his friends to hurry in because they had skipped school too many times, but they ignored his words and chose to go to Sumida's house. Yatora then left them and walked down the streets of Shibuya while reading his book to learn. Along the way, he occasionally looked at the surrounding buildings. Arriving at school, apparently, some of his friends who had failed to attend school decided to continue going to school. That day was apparently the moment for the distribution of school exam results. Surprisingly, Yatora got 4th place in his class. His 3 friends were, of course, shocked by the result because he always spent time with them and was never seen studying. One of his friends called him a genius. Yatora denied this and stated that he was only working class. During recess, Yatora and his friends were seen complaining in a school hallway because they had to fill out a career form for the future. Even though they are still in the 2nd grade of high school, they must consider the future. Meanwhile, Yatora is sure about the career he will take in the future. But before he said that to his friends, a beautiful girl named Yuka suddenly ran across in front of him. This made Yatora forget about what he wanted to convey to his friends. The next class is boring for Yatora, which is art, so he decides to sleep during art lessons. Yatora seemed to be walking lazily towards his house. Arriving at home, he immediately entered his room and threw himself onto the bed. But considering that he had to enter a state university when he graduated from high school, he got up from his bed again and began to open his book to study. He felt how difficult it was to balance between hanging out with his 3 friends and having to keep learning, which would drain his energy. But that's the only thing he can do so he won't be too lonely during his studies. Suddenly he got a message from one of his friends via cell phone saying that there would be a final match at 8 o'clock tonight. Of course, Yatora promised to be there to maintain his friendship. He took a deep breath and determined to study harder. Before meeting his friends, Yatora, who was tired and exhausted, decided to take a break while smoking a cigarette. But he just remembered that his cigarette was left in the art class drawer. He decided to go back to school to pick up the cigarettes. The school seemed deserted, and when he arrived at the art room, he was stunned to see a painting of 2 very impressive women. He felt the painting was alive. Yatora took a better look at the painting. He noticed that one of the women in the painting was painted in a slightly greener color. He thought the different colors gave a mysterious and demon-like impression. Because of his curiosity, he intends to touch the painting. Suddenly he was surprised by Yuka's presence behind him and stated that the paint had not yet dried. Yuka then asked Yatora if he really intended to go to the art club or just wanted to take his cigarettes. Yuka then held out a pack of cigarettes from her hand, which Yatora immediately took. Yuka then stated that she knew that Yatora only smoked when he was with his friends, and he had to stop his smoking habit as soon as possible. Yatora was annoyed with Yuka's attitude. Yatora then told Yuka that studying art requires a lot of money, while the future is not guaranteed. He suggested Yuka to be a sugar baby because she has a beautiful face. Seeing the debate between Yatora and Yuka, their art teacher intervened and said there was still a place to study art that was not too expensive, namely at the Tokyo State University. Yatora then apologized to both of them and said he didn't mean to demean the arts major. However, deep down, he still felt that art lectures were a waste of time and nothing. The art teacher said that not all art does not produce anything. She then gave the example of Picasso, who was able to sell his paintings at high prices. Finding himself lost in the debate, Yatora excused himself, left them all in the art room, and walked home. In the evening, he gathered at Sumida's house with his friends to watch the final match. During the match, Yatora kept thinking about why people liked art. He could never understand that. When Japan finally won in the final match, he wondered why there was a sense of joy that arose when the victory had nothing to do with those who were only spectators. The ones who fight are the players, and the fun should belong to them alone. But Yatora didn't understand why he could feel happy about his team's victory. After the game was over, they had a drinking party until morning. When morning came, Yatora and his friends walked home. On the way, Yatora remarked that Shibuya looked beautiful in the morning, but his friend replied that Shibuya smelled of garbage. Yatora seemed to be contemplating when an older classmate was overwhelmed with painting equipment in the school hallway. Yatora offers to help his classmate named Mori. He helped carry the painting equipment to the art room, and it turned out that it was the woman who made the paintings of the 2 women. Yatora asked Mori why one of the girls was slightly green, But Mori did not immediately answer his question and instead praised his sharpness of vision. Mori then explained a technique of combining colors called tervert. According to her, combining several colors will produce colors that are more attractive and look perfect to look. Yatora compliments Mori by saying she is a genius, but Mori refuses to be considered a genius because she only works hard. Hearing this, Yatora was surprised because that was how he had been feeling. He then apologized and stated that he understood Mori's feelings. Yatora then chatted with Mori by discussing Shibuya in the morning, which seemed bluer than other places. But Mori admitted that she didn't go to Shibuya very often. Even so, she chimed in that if she felt very blue at that time, other things like apples and rabbits also looked blue. Hearing this, something suddenly sparked Yatora and made him want to paint the atmosphere of Shibuya in the morning for his painting assignment. Yatora seems to combine several blue colors which he thinks are similar to Shibuya's atmosphere. Without noticing, he began to fill the drawing paper with blue streaks. After that, then he drew the buildings around Shibuya on paper. He combined various blue colors to get results matching Shibuya's morning conditions. Just then, Yatora felt an unusual feeling. He feels very enthusiastic and emotional with every stroke that he pours on his canvas. He had never felt this sensation in his life. The students' paintings were displayed along the school hallways for the next few days. One of the paintings belonged to Yatora. Yuka seemed impressed and praised those who saw the painting morning in Shibuya. However, when Yuka found out it was Yatora's work, she retracted her words. Yuka then looked away and left Yatora's painting. Meanwhile, Yatora's three friends seemed to praise his work. They tried to give their opinion about the painting, making Yatora feel very alive. Not only that, the art teacher also praised Yatora's painting and said the painting was very firm and able to convey his heart. However, there were still some revisions to his painting and Yatora was asked to repaint. But that day he had intended to go home immediately to study. He then removed his painting from the wall and returned to his house. Arriving at home, there was a chat between Yatora and his parents. His parents said they could not afford to pay Yatora to study at a private university. Yatora could understand that. He then went to his room to start studying, but something seemed to bother him. He then began to take out a sheet of paper and scratched his pencil on the paper and began to draw. He produced several paintings that day. The next day, he showed his painting to his art teacher. The teacher appreciated Yatora's drawing and provided input on the image. Yatora said he was interested in continuing his studies at Tokyo State University. He wondered if this kind of work would be enough to get him accepted. His teacher explained that the competition for art majors at Tokyo State University was fierce, and the competition ratio was 200 to 1. This made Yatora a little angry, but he could feel the excitement within him. He then enrolled in the art club as a form of seriousness to pursue his desire. Some of Yatora's teachers regretted this because Yatora was a smart student. His art teacher also asked him if he had told his parents about this interest. Yatora said that he had not dared to tell his parents. A few days later, Yatora officially joined the art club. There he introduced himself to several people who had already joined. He judged that they were all geniuses. As the newest person, he felt his abilities were not as good as the others. However, he was treated differently by his art teacher, where he was constantly praised while others received criticism for their work. This annoyed Yatora because he thought he was the stupidest, so he had to be praised continuously. Yatora then went home, and due to exhaustion, he ended up falling asleep. While sleeping, his mother entered his room to look at his career form, which listed Tokyo State University's art major as his choice. Summer vacation arrives, and Yatora is determined to develop his skills by learning to paint in his school's art room. In addition, he also got an art assignment for his summer vacation. This made Yatora understand art more and realize that art can also be produced by those willing to learn it. He could see a painting carefully, which he had never done before. When school returns, he gets a lot of appreciation from the art teacher or other students in the art club. His art teacher offered him to take painting lessons, especially for oil painting. Meanwhile, Mori is the one who was accepted into the University of Tokyo. Yatora asked Mori if she was approved to study art, and she replied that since childhood, she had been in the art world, so her parents supported her from the start. This condition is clearly different from Yatora, who just learned to paint some time ago and is worried about his mother's blessing. Mori, who heard this, tried to cheer up Yatora by asking him to paint together. They will be the object of each of their paintings, where Yatora will paint Mori and Mori will paint him. In the middle of the painting, Mori said there are many stories about the origin of a painting. One of the things that she liked about painting was that it was a form of prayer. At that time, Mori painted Yatora as a god who is the god of war and victory. Yatora then found the courage to wait for the results of his painting until Mori's graduation day arrived. Meanwhile, Yatora saw his mother, who was in the living room. He then gave her a painting of his mother, who was cooking. His mother was very happy because she had been given the painting. Yatora said that he felt he saw things in more detail when painting. He could see things he hadn't noticed before, such as his mother's hands turning dull when she finished washing or small scratches on his mother's arms from lifting heavy loads. All of this Yatora conveyed to his mother, and she was moved. He then asked his mother for permission to study art even though he had just started studying art. He also promised to be serious in carrying out his studies, and he also wanted to see more things by painting. His mother heard Yatora's statement and thanked him for everything he said. His mother then allowed him to study art. Time changes until Mori's graduation day arrive. It turned out that Yatora was painting Mori while painting accompanied by two female goddesses. Mori looks impressed by Yatora's painting. Meanwhile, Yatora and Mori are currently taking a painting course where Yatora is taking an oil painting class and Yuka taking a Japanese painting class. But at the course's first meeting, they were all combined in the same class to make a sketch of a statue. In that class, Yatora met a teenage boy named Takashi Yodosuke who was sketching a statue for the first time. Surprisingly, Yodosuke's painting is the most extraordinary, while Yatora's painting is really ordinary compared to Yodosuke's. He realized that Yodosuke's skill was far above his. It turned out that Yodosuke also took the same class as Yatora and several others. Compared to Yodosuke and Hashida, other students in the class, Yatora's paintings look very ordinary, and the tutor says that with the current abilities Yatora has, it is still very difficult to get accepted into the University of Tokyo. The teacher gave input to find out what kind of painting he liked and explore his abilities there. His teacher also advised Yatora to go to an art museum. Yatora was initially very reluctant to follow his teacher's advice, but to improve his abilities, he finally went with Yodosuke and Hashida. But when they were at the art museum, neither of them was inspired and decided to leave. Not long after, they went to a park not far from the museum. There Yatora saw Yuka crying on a bench. Yatora left his two friends and met her. Apparently, Yuka had just been on a date, and her date had just ended it. Yatora guessed the reason the man ended the date. It turned out that Yatora's guess was right. Yuki was originally a man named Ryuji Ayukawa. He's a boy who dresses like a girl, and all the children in his school know that, and his school friends don't seem to care about Yuka. However, Yuka is still unlucky in love. A few days later, Yatora had yet to find a way to paint a composition based on what he liked. He tried to combine painting as a top-notch painting but was still considered lacking in focus by his tutor. Finally, he asked Yodosuke's help to find out where his paintings were lacking, and after studying his paintings, Yodosuke said that Yatora only combined various top paintings without knowing the essence of each painting he combined. Yodosuke blatantly said that Yatora was only combining surfaces and didn't understand the meaning of the painting at all. When Yatora consulted his tutor, Oba, she laughed and thought Yodosuke's words were too painful to say. Finally, Oba emphasized that every painting should highlight one main object and that every corner must be attractive. She also explained the importance of composition in a painting. Yatora then studied a painting of a flower garden, where the painting contained a tree while yellow flowers around it seemed to point towards the tree. He learned what Oba meant. While painting, he saw that many other students were free to express themselves by painting. Among them were those who tore the canvas and used the spray. Some even looked like they had put their palms on the canvas. Yatora realized that painting really was freer than expected. This also makes Yatora feel inferior because his paintings are not as good as other students. When collecting the paintings, he did not expect that the paintings that he made received high scores and were far higher than those of Yodosuke and Hashida. Meanwhile, Koana got first place, who actually looked disappointed. According to the myth, anyone who ranks in the course place always fails the college painting exam. Surprisingly, Yodosuke didn't want to continue his painting course anymore. He said that the painting course only helped them make paintings according to the criteria of the college they wanted to enter. He argues that painting lessons do not really teach participants to paint. This made Yatora indecisive, and he began to not know the direction of the destination of his painting journey. It's different when he is still focused on studying. He knows what his learning goals are. In the next tutoring class, Oba ordered them to paint without looking at objects and using only imagination. Unexpectedly, this task is much more difficult than expected. Yatora began to think about what was most precious in his life as a first step. He then remembered Mori. Without her, he would not be at this point of learning to paint. Then he remembered the art teacher and also Yuka, who was no less meritorious, and so are his friends. He then began to paint with the theme of bonding. However, this painting still gets criticism from Oba because it is considered less attractive and expressive. To help him, Oba suggested that Yatora give his painting a title. Meanwhile, Yuka has not attended painting lessons for several days. His father started to get angry because of his behavior and said he was a strange child. One day, Yatora went to Mori's college but found no one in Mori's studio. He saw that there was a painting that was still just as good. Yatora saw that Mori's painting still used the same theme, namely prayer. He then realized that composition is only a tool to pour his emotions and ideas into the painting. He rushed to his course and began to paint the theme of bonding, and as a result, the painting he made received praise from many parties. Yatora then got another task, namely painting food, but this time he got the lowest score because he only made a few modifications to his previous painting. Oba asked Yatora to be more creative and come up with new things. In her judgment, a painting like this was still insufficient to get him accepted into the Tokyo University of the Arts. When winter break arrived, Yatora asked Oba to give him extra lessons. He said he wanted to be better because he was not a genius. Yatora is also still on a journey to discover the characteristics and weapons of his paintings. Oba stated that he could find weapons by exploring using painting tools. Yatora then realized that something was interesting about painting using a sewing pencil. When the winter vacation was over, Yatora gave his painting to Oba, and she praised his work. Oba then compared his paintings with alumni who had made it into the Tokyo University of the Arts. Yatora was then interested in a painting that turned out to be Kuwana's brother. He then consulted Oba again about what he should do in the face of the exam, and Oba then explained that Yatora's shortcomings were selfishness, adaptability, and enjoying the atmosphere. This advice from Oba made Yatora even tenser. He then remembered when he first learned to paint where there was passion in every stroke of his hand, and now he doesn't enjoy painting, especially when he has to deal with exams. He was aware of it and tried to be more relaxed and excited. As a result, he rediscovered his passion. It was time for the exams, and Yatora felt a little tense, but he had to be able to control himself. The theme of the exam this time was painting yourself. Yatora started to make sketches to describe the ideas he had. Then he looked at the mirror in front of him. Suddenly he realized there were two figures of Yatora in the mirror and in real life. This describes him as a delinquent but always getting good grades. Yatora started to make several painting options depicting dualism, but they all seemed normal. Suddenly, the child in front of him walked backward and broke Yatora's mirror. He was then inspired to depict himself in a mirror cut. Yatora took his exam in 5 hours. He left the class satisfied, but he was still unsure of his results. On the day of the announcement of Stage 1, there were only 3 students who passed to the next stage. They are Kuwana, Hashida, and Yatora. They will soon face a color-focused test. Color is a tricky thing compared to other technicalities. However, Oba asked Yatora to calm down and practice. Yatora goes to a paint shop, where he meets Yuka and asks why he didn't finish the Tokyo Art University entrance exam and instead paints an X on the canvas. Yuka was silent hearing that and ignored what Yatora asked. He also added a trope that Yatora was the type of person who would just throw his life vest at a drowning person but didn't want to dive in to save him. It turns out that Yuka's life has been very hard all this time, where both his parents hate him, and he only has a grandmother who is still kind to him. He also works as a prostitute and begins to give up and leave the art world. One night, Yuka calls Yatora in tears. Yatora then said that he was willing to accompany him and even dive to save him. Yatora and Yuki then meet at a station, and it turns out that they are heading to the beach. On the way to the beach, Yatora wonders if Yuka will end his life, but Yuka replies that he couldn't die yet. Because it was night, they decided to spend the night at the inn. Arriving at the inn, he accidentally fell asleep. Yuka woke him up to take a shower and recap the conversation. In the chat, Yatora asked Yuka why he couldn't die. Yuka shared that when he was in middle school, he wanted to die, but one of his middle school friends said he couldn't die if he didn't kill himself naked. The meaning of these words is if he is still thinking about other people's opinions, then he still cannot die. Yatora then had the idea of painting each of them naked. Yuka agreed and they made a barrier and started painting themselves without looking at each other. Yatora then asked Yuka why he chose a Japanese painting course when he liked Western painting. He replied that it was a form of respect for his grandmother who was the only person who was kind to him at home. He also said that he had always liked women, but people will more easily understand and translate him alias Ryuji's appearance as a woman who likes men. The next day, they returned to the city and separated. The second exam stage arrived, which turned out to be for the Stage 2 exam. When they got to the exam room on the 7th floor, it turned out that the elevator was broken, and all participants were forced to go up the stairs. Yatora started to feel that something was wrong with him because he was tired and not like he used to be. For that day's session, they were tasked with painting nude models. Yatora was getting dizzy because he couldn't find any inspiration while his body still hadn't fully recovered. He accidentally fell asleep and only had 3 hours left. When Yatora woke up, he quickly started his painting. He had the idea of translating the term naked by himself as is. He immediately executed the theme. The second stage of the examination is divided into several parts. When the first part is finished, the participants may leave the examination room. Part 2 itself will only be continued the next day. Yatora just realized that some of the participants haven't finished their paintings yet, so he can feel calm because he hasn't been far behind. A Apparently, the first day was used by the participants to determine the theme of drawing in the sketchbook and give the basic colors. And the next day, when the colors on the canvas dried up, they started drawing what had become their respective theme. The test started again. The participants prepared while the female model immediately went to the stage naked. Yatora finally started painting the model's body and gave the model white as the background. He released his ultimate move that had not been issued so far. He uses oil paint to complete his exam. Yatora finished his painting with the model's details and added another detail in the form of other painters who were surrounding the model, like silhouettes. After the exam, Yatora talked with Yorasuke about what he was doing. Yorasuke then praised Yatora's concept for completing his painting. Announcement day arrived. Unexpectedly, Yatora successfully passed the exam and was accepted at the Tokyo University of the Arts. Yorasuke was also accepted into the university. But surprisingly, Kuwana was not accepted, and she felt very sad. Yatora gave the news to his parents, and they looked happy. Not to forget, Mori also praised Yatora's hard work. That day Yatora closed by celebrating his success by partying with his friends. The moral message we can learn from this anime is to try to chase your dreams according to your talent and passion, because what defines you in the future is what you love and can live within this life.